With the upcoming school year weeks away,
We love our students. We cannot wait to hear the laughter in the hallways again.
parents and students are searching for solutions in this new learning reality.
Our kids are just as confused and scared as we are.
From in-person to virtual classes, new bus protocols, sports schedules, and student safety.
We're going to do everything in our power to keep students safe.
7 News is answering your questions live in a special report, Back to School. Your questions answered.
And good evening and welcome to the 7 News Back to School special. During this hour ahead, we will be joined by state and local leaders to get your questions answered.
There are a lot of them. You know, for most of our lives, school has been a familiar routine. The same hours, the same days, predictable holidays, and homework. This year is different. There are more than 750,000 K-12 students in South Carolina, each with their own educational needs. There are another 50,000 public school teachers spread across more than 100 school districts, and each district has its own unusual plan to reopen, most of which still haven't been approved by the state. The governor wants students in class in person if possible, while some upstate superintendents have pushed back, saying they'll put health and safety first. The only broad agreement is that this year will not look like anything we've done before.
I want parents to know that this will be very different instruction than it was in March. That was emergency instruction. This is going to be well thought out.
The use of masks, physical distancing, they're really re-engineering what school will look like.
You may need an engineer to understand the mechanics of your online classroom or how socially distant busing could run on time. Will young athletes be allowed to compete? And will students with special needs get the care they deserve? This school year will be putting South Carolina to the test. And tonight, we're getting answers. Those are just some of the topics we'll address for you, but each family, of course, has to decide what works best for its kids. Hopefully, throughout this special, we can help. Amy?
Well, so far, Gordon, 31 South Carolina school districts reopening plans. They've been approved. And tonight, we have the Superintendent of Education, Molly Spearman, with us via Zoom to answer some of your questions about that process of approval and what to expect this fall. Superintendent, thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you, Amy. I'm so happy to be with you.
I'm going to start off before we get to our first viewer question with the situation for Spartanburg County schools. We have about 6 districts in the upstate already approved, but only 1 Spartanburg County district so far. What's the timeline for the rest of our upstate districts to be approved?
Well, we anticipate having all of our plans approved by the end of next week. So look for more plans to be coming out, hopefully tomorrow and for sure the first of the week. You've got great districts, great leadership, great community support. So I know that the plans that have been submitted from Spartanburg County are very high quality. So hopefully we'll have them out very soon.
All right, Jeffrey Schweiderman kind of gets at that, saying what happens if Molly Spearman does not approve a school district plan before school starts? Is that even a possibility?
Well, let's just say I'm working very closely with district superintendents, with their communities. My goal was to have some type of face-to-face communication with the student and their teachers. I really think it's important for us to put our eyes on our students since we have not seen them in person since March 16th. So during the LEAP days, those 5 additional days for kindergarten through 8th graders or pre-K through 8th graders, all schools will be inviting all of their students to come in for some face-to-face time, some assessments. So I'm looking for that in the plan. Several communities feel that they need to start virtually. And so we're trying to work that out to make sure that there's some type of periodical face-to-face time with students and that we feel very comfortable with that. So that's probably the largest thing that we're working through, in addition to making sure our special ed students, so students with disabilities or those who need special services, that they're well taken care of as well.
Teachers, of course, have a lot of questions as well. Listen to this one.
About what happens when a teacher has to, if a teacher has to go out sick or a teacher has to go in quarantine because of the illness, they were exposed to the illness in their classroom. How does that affect their pay? How does that affect sick days? What types of policies are being put in place statewide and even district-wide?
So what about the approach for that?
Well, there's actually some federal coverage for extra federal leave coverage for employees, and teachers are under that coverage. They will be allowed to go home and spend the time that they need. Each district will be working on a case-by-case basis with those teachers with some extra leave time that they have. And I'm sure the district superintendents who are going to be on a little bit later can speak to that more clearly than I, because they work with that. But there is extra coverage for all employees, including teachers.
And a final question from Crystal Weaver in Greenville.
What they're going to do with sanitation if there is a student saying, you know, they did the temperature screening and say their temperature was fine, but then what happens if a child is positive? What's the steps is the school going to take to sanitize?
Okay, another great question, and lots of protocols have been put in place. All of the protocols are online for teachers, family members, students to look at, and we're doing some special training as well for custodians, for our school nurses, so that everyone is uniformly doing the right thing. I know in my own district here in Saluda, down the road a little ways from Spartanburg, there was training held today for the custodians to know how to clean, how to use the disinfectants properly. We're working with our bus drivers, cafeteria workers, everyone to be sure that they understand the correct protocols to keep our schools clean and as safe as possible.
Molly Spearman, Superintendent of Education, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. I enjoyed being with you.
Gordon.
And still ahead, Senator Lindsey Graham is standing by. He'll join us live from the nation's capital.
Well, we've been talking for months about the digital divide in South Carolina and the challenges that families face when it comes to learning online. Of course, we're going to dig into that again tonight because there are 400,000 South Carolina families that don't have internet access in their homes. The state is working on short-term solutions, trying to make sure that students can be online. 200,000 Wi-Fi hotspots have already been secured, and school districts can also secure some of that funding to help low-income families pay for monthly internet service.
Why use a hotspot when you have capability of connecting to the internet just based on an affordability? Because I think in the long run, that is a huge savings. And when you have a family of 3 children, they all then have access as well as the parents.
The state is using federal coronavirus relief to increase internet access, but the CARES Act funding runs out at the end of the year, which means thousands of students could once again get disconnected.
We're getting answers tonight, so let's get an answer to that issue. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham standing by for us. He's in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. with us. Senator Graham, the CARES Act funding going away. Will schools in South Carolina be getting some federal help to pay for things, for Wi-Fi access to students, for example?
Well, I hope so. I just talked to Senator Warner from Virginia, and I have a proposal for $5 billion to help rural America have better access to the internet, and we're going to double it to 10. So there are spots in South Carolina you might as well be on the moon when it comes to high-speed internet, and we need to close that gap quickly to allow distance learning. And when it comes to going back to school, excuse me, in person, the House and the Senate have $105 billion set aside to help schools go back safely.
About that issue, there are school districts, and we're going to have the Greenville County Superintendent on in just a little bit, that are running massive deficits this year because they are having to cover for extra safety measures, extra social distancing, as well as, frankly, the economy is having a tough time here. Will there be a deal in the Congress to give more direct funding either to districts or to states to distribute to those districts?
There has to be. Now listen, we're at war with this virus, and one of the casualties in this war is to be able to go back to school safely. We need to make sure that the federal government will help states and local school districts who choose to go back in person with funding to keep the classroom safe, put up plexiglass, do all the things you need to protect students with the virus. And we also need to build out the last mile of broadband to make sure that rural America has access to the internet at a level to make sure our kids can learn if they can't go to the classroom. Those two things must be done by the federal government. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure they are done.
And Senator, when you joined us in our coronavirus town hall a couple of months back, you were very clear in saying there would be a second wave of this virus as we went into the fall and the winter months.
Yeah.
This first wave has already killed 1,600 people in South Carolina. If there is going to be a second wave, if you're right about that, is it safe to put kids back into these schools with the teachers and the custodial staff?
Well, what we know now, children do not transmit the virus. They handle it a lot better than adults. There's a cost of not going to school. There's a cost of keeping parents out of the workforce. So Bill Gates said today that he believed it was best to go back to school in person, but it has to be done safely. I'll leave it up to South Carolina school districts what choice they want to make, but the federal government needs to help with that choice. There needs to be money to safely go back to schools. This has been a burden on our school system. They don't have the money, so the federal government needs to fill in the gaps financially. And I will end on this. The broadband issue is huge. Telemedicine, one way to keep people off the road is deal with them, the doctor and the patient, without having come to the office. Telemedicine needs high-speed internet. Virtual learning needs high-speed internet. I am determined to make sure that South Carolina gets high-speed internet in every corner of our state.
And Senator, our president and our governor have been adamant about face-to-face instruction for students in South Carolina and around the country.
Yeah.
But, you know, districts are different. Oconee and Cherokee are very different places.
Right.
Greenville is different. So you would allow, it sounds like, for different districts to not have in-person learning depending on the virus.
I didn't get elected to run school districts. I got elected to help my state and the nation as a whole. I'm going to leave it up to people in South Carolina. I think Molly Spearman's idea that you've got to wear a mask on a school bus makes sense. I'll leave it up to the governor and the superintendent of education and school districts who are elected to do these things to decide what's best to do for the children of our state. I think getting back to school in person is the goal. That should be the primary goal. And not to go to school in person, there should be a very good reason we can't do that. But one way to make sure we can go to school in classrooms is for the federal government to reconfigure these classrooms to make it safe. The downside of not going to school in person is very real to parents and children.
Yeah. All right, Senator Lindsey Graham, we do appreciate your time with us this evening. Thank you.
Coming up, the superintendent for the biggest school district in South Carolina, Greenville County, is joining us. How the district will handle the fall semester.
It's a lot of concerns, you know what I mean? I just want to make sure everything is safe, you know. I just hope that, you know, they're being really safe, you know, and it just, all the precautions that they need to take, they're taking it step by step and not just, okay, well, we want to get these kids in school.
Parents, teachers, so many of our 7 News viewers' questions are focused in on how we can physically be in school and keep all the teachers and the students safe. So to get some answers from the experts, we pull in the superintendent from the state's largest school district. This is Dr. Burke Royster of Greenville County Schools. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Amy. We appreciate you providing this opportunity so we can get information out to our community, to our parents, and to our students.
Well, we have our first question coming from a 7 News viewer, and it says that many honors and AP classes won't be offered virtually in some places. Is this the case for all districts, they're asking? Also, can anything be done? Because in essence, this person's saying, I have to choose between my son's health as an asthma sufferer and his education. What's the scene in Greenville County?
Well, in Greenville, we'll be able to offer all the AP courses that we normally offer. In fact, there will actually be some opportunities that some of our students may have virtually that they didn't have if they were in a smaller high school. Every school doesn't have the same number of AP courses. And because we're doing them virtually with our virtual school, that will benefit students no matter what size high school, whether it's our smallest at 750 or our 2300 high school. So for Greenville County students, those AP opportunities are there, and in some cases, an expanded opportunity.
And families can always reach out to their school district to get some answers on specifics like that, right?
Absolutely, because we would never attempt to try to speak for another district,
Sure.
but certainly contact your
Reach
local
out.
school or your local district.
Here's a question from a teacher.
Okay.
And one of the questions that teachers want to know is if within a classroom students become sick or the teacher becomes sick, what's the protocol is going to be for that?
And that question, Dr. Royster, obviously a lot of parents wonder that too. So
Sure.
how's that going to work?
Well, if a student or teacher or other employee becomes ill during the school day, they'll be escorted to the nurses area in the building. We have an area set aside there where they can be isolated. So they'll be removed from the classroom, removed from their office area, put in that area until they can be transported home. Now, exposure, which is a little different question than what you would do with someone who's become ill at school, that's governed by the DHEC protocols. And you can go on our website and you can see them. I would never attempt to try to explain them here. There's a full page flow chart spreadsheet that shows what should be done in the event of an exposure to a person who has tested positive for the virus or become ill with the virus. Simply because you've been in contact with that person, if the social distancing protocols are being followed that we've put in place, if masks are being worn when that can't be done, a mere exposure to an individual like that doesn't mean necessarily an individual will be quarantined.
Okay.
But again, we follow the DHEC guidance strictly on that. And we've had people over the summer have to be quarantined among our 12-month employees. Generally speaking, contact that they've had out in the community then either tested positive or been in proximity to someone who was.
Of course, there's a lot of questions about the school bus scene and how that's going to work, distancing the kids and how the routes will work. How's that going to play out?
Well, right now the bus capacities have been established at 67% of their normal load, so it would be a reduced load. Students will be required to wear a mask on the bus. The driver will wear a mask on the bus. The routes will be shortened. The Greenville County Schools plan for those that remain in regular school, not those that have chosen a 100% virtual program, but there is a 0 days of attendance, 1 day, 2 days, and 5. 0 is obviously people staying at home because we're in a very high rate of spread or there's a health condition that would warrant that. But on the 1 day, only 20% of students would be in school on a particular day.
So in a young class, how many kids would that be?
Well, in a first grade class might be 5 or 6.
Gotcha.
In an upper elementary might be 7 or 8.
Okay.
On a 2 schedule, it would be about
Different.
double that number.
Gotcha.
So that
And so
reduces the demand on the bus, and it also allows us to make sure that we maintain 6 feet of social distancing inside those classrooms, which we believe is the key. That and the mask wearing when you can't do that, those are the keys to ensure the safety of our students and the safety of our employees.
We have got to run. Dr. Royster, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate
Thank you.
it. Gordon?
Still ahead, more students appear to be flocking to private schools this year. So how can you do that and sign up now and convert your home, if you need to a homeschooling paradise?
With all the questions that surround this school year, some parents are choosing a new option. Private schools in the upstate are being overwhelmed. 7 News reporter Ann Maxwell takes a closer look.
Private schools in the area are offering 5 days a week in-person learning, and administrators tell me applications are surging for this upcoming school year.
The interest in our 6th grade this summer, in particular the last 2 or 3 weeks, has been overwhelming.
Keith Kaiser is headmaster at St. Joseph's Catholic School in Greenville, a private school with about 600 students in grades 6 through 12.
We have decided that we're going to go back to in-person education 5 days a week.
The school is having teachers and students wear masks. To make room for social distancing and more students, they're even tearing down walls and holding class in tents.
We've had a lot of interest. So a typical July for us might be 8 applicants. This July we've had 36 applicants.
Kaiser says he thinks families might be drawn to the certainty of having kids in school every day.
What I'm hearing is that their kids badly need to be with other kids. They badly need to be engaged socially.
And with tuition around $15,000 a year for high schoolers, expectation was part of the equation when thinking about reopening.
And I think it was a concern of a lot of private schools, right? When parents are paying for a certain type of education, that's what they expect to get.
Southside Christian School in Simpsonville has also seen a surge in interest this summer.
It's been our impression that COVID has caused parents to rethink what type of education they want for their child. So it's given parents a chance to reconsider what do they really hope to accomplish in their child's education, and perhaps now's the time to consider a place like Southside Christian School.
They are also offering in-person 5-day-a-week classes with kids wearing masks and social distancing in the classroom. They are also offering a virtual option. A spokesperson with Greenville County Schools tells me they won't know how many families have pulled their kids out of public school in the area until after the school year begins. In Greenville County, Ann Maxwell, 7 News.
Christ Church Episcopal School in Greenville also reports it's seen an increase in interest and enrollment in this upcoming school year.
Whether it's out of stock or outside the family budget, parents are having to get creative with a back-to-school list that looks a lot different this year. 7 News anchor Ben Hoover found out one way to get your kids ready and show you how to do it without breaking the bank.
Well, with many schools likely starting remotely, homeschooling experts say an efficient learning area away from the many distractions of being at home will help the kids stay focused on their assignments this year. If you don't want to monopolize the kitchen or dining room table, you're likely in the market for a desk. But as I found out, at times they can be hard to find and hard on the wallet. So why not apply a little DIY?
After a trip to the hardware store, we head to Gaffney to meet up with DIY diva Ann Hanna of Palmetto DIY.
It's my thing.
Where I learn a little lumber can go a long way. 10 pieces of wood for under 40 bucks. Compare that to desks online at big box stores that start at around $100. That's a savings.
You'll need posts, you'll need a frame, and you'll need a desktop.
And no need to risk life and limb with a circular saw at home. Little known secret?
At Home Depot and Lowe's, you take them the dimensions that you want, how the length of each board that you want, and they will literally cut it and package it up for you to walk out the door with it. You don't need a saw at home. Really, all you need is
this.
Yeah. Okay.
A power drill and some screws.
Then it's just a matter of putting it together.
Let's get after it. While trying not to strip the screws or split the wood in under 1 hour. Success. We have a desk. Imagine a computer, paper, pencils, all their school stuff, but not before you let your child's imagination run wild with the final step.
They can pick the colors. If they want to paint the desktop in a certain color, they can do that. If they want to stain the wood in a certain color, if they want it to match their room, you could actually paint the chalkboard paint right on it and use that to scribble on and stuff and make it a lot of fun.
Fun and done.
The National Retail Federation found in its annual survey parents of kids in elementary through high school plan to spend an average of nearly $790 per family, topping a previous record. The higher amount is attributed to the purchasing of electronics like computers and printers for at-home learning and bigger items like desks. So if you can save on a desk, why not? At 7 on Main, Ben Hoover, 7 News.
Including the dimensions for each piece of wood you need and simple step-by-step instructions. Look for this story on WSPA.com in our Back to School Headquarters section.
And next, Dr. Cedric McFadden will join us answering your questions on staying healthy at school this fall.
Is always a stressful time of year for families. This year, a whole new level of stress. 7 News' Asia Wilson talked to a number of people still trying to figure out how they're approaching this school year.
Are they going to be eating lunch in the classroom? Or are they going to be the entire time in the classroom? How they're going to do recess?
Although school will start in just a few weeks, parents like Crystal Weaver still have questions and concerns.
My decision was to do the virtual academy because right now there's still uncertainty going on with the schools.
The fear of the unknown is what secondary instructional services staff have heard for weeks. They're trying to help families see the pros and cons of all the options.
I think that comes down to a personal decision, a family decision.
Experts say if you're still deciding or considering a change of plans, think about the people in your household with pre-existing conditions. But on the other hand, some say their child needs social interaction and face-to-face instruction like Shannon Stone's son.
He's very good learning with in-school surroundings. He does well in the classroom.
The pros of the virtual academy is that you can do your instruction, you can do it at home.
You know how you clean your house, you know what is being brought into your house.
School specialists also say parents are concerned about missing out on hands-on programs and classes like band and art.
He's been in gifted and talented program throughout school, and I'm afraid that he would not be able to progress as well in an online situation.
While there are no wrong or right choices, professionals want you not to stress, but breathe and do what's right for you.
But unfortunately, what's going on right now is the new normal. I just wish that there was a little bit more structure and certainty.
Asia Wilson, 7 News.
Our 7 News medical expert is joining the conversation now, focusing in on the health side of going back to school tonight. We welcome in Dr. Cedric McFadden and thank him for joining us. Of course, a lot of families just want to know, okay, what's the most important thing I need to keep in mind as I try to keep my family safe and healthy this fall?
Well, the first thing that we have to all do is model the behavior that we like to see. So that means right now you should be practicing with hand hygiene religiously in the house so that when they do get to school, it's second nature. Secondly, you want to make sure that you're continuing to keep that social bubble fairly small. Even though we're broadening it out with going back to school, you don't want to be the nidus or kind of introducing other people into the equation that could then bring infection into both the school and or your family.
Jennifer Harris asking, I'm all for school starting back, but she says, I'm concerned about the mask wearing for children with reactive airway or asthma. What about that kind of health concern in mask wearing?
So while there's no blanket advice for all people with asthma, in general, people with moderate or even severe asthma can wear a mask for even short periods of time. It may depend on the type of mask that you're wearing, and especially with children, you want to find a mask that's comfortable for them. Perhaps if they're wearing the ones with the ties behind the ears, it's irritating. So try practicing at home for shorter periods of time, trying different fabrics, trying different types of masks. Make it fun, make it colorful, make it something that they'll want to wear, even if it's for short periods of time while they're at school.
Tony Papa is asking, what about the school safety tips when it comes to school lunch? A lot of people are going to be eating in their classroom. What do we need to keep in mind with that?
So lots of grab and go. Practicing, especially with the little children, how to open containers, how to open up bags of chips or whatever they may be drinking, how to open the juice boxes. The less amount of people that they have to have that's helping them, the better they're going to be. So taking that opportunity now to practice and really anticipating that when they get to school, it's going to be more of a grab and go than the traditional go through the line with the tray, even if they're picking it up from the cafeteria.
We know there are a lot of families, Dr. C, that have to have a child go back home to grandma or grandpa who are more high risk for this illness. What do they need to keep in mind?
So we want to protect the grandparents because in some cases they're part of the caregivers. Making sure that while you're at school that you're adhering as close as you can to social distancing, making sure that you are making every attempt to listen to what the teachers are saying about, washing your hands, about when it's time for bathroom breaks, so that you're not bringing that home into the family. And even when you're getting home, remembering that weekends and all the things we normally do for fun, whether it be football or basketball, it may be limited as we continue to protect even the grandparents.
And should a child be wearing a mask around their grandparent just in case?
Well, there's some theory to protecting even in the home if you are, around high-risk people, perhaps still wearing that mask with that social distancing. But again, if this is a part of the social bubble that you're protecting, that you're keeping safe, it may not be necessary 24/7.
Dr. Cedric McFadden, our 7 News medical expert, thank you for being here as we get ready to go back to school.
Up next, athletics. We'll talk to an upstate high school athletics director about what to expect before you hit the field or the bleachers.
back to school means back on the field for high school athletics, or does it?
Yeah, plans for fall sports have to be flexible this year. Right now, it looks like athletes will be allowed to compete. So we took your questions to the athletic director at Dorman High School, Flynn Harrell. Question number one, is it safe for students to play sports in the fall?
Well, we're going to make it as safe as we possibly can. That includes having checks, temperature checks, and screening questions before they begin practicing or workouts, and then making sure that we try to keep them socially distanced as best as we possibly can, given their specific sport and the activity that is involved there. Also wearing masks when they're not actively participating in an activity. So those are some of the things that we're doing as the athletes are working out and practicing. And right now they're in small groups of 10. That number will increase beginning next week as we move into a reopening phase 1.5, and we'll increase that to 16 athletes. So we're taking baby steps right now and trying to be extra cautious with each step.
Do you have a contingency plan in place if several members of one of these athletic teams do test positive during the season?
Well, so the plan right now by high school league guidelines is we're going to try to start fall sports practice on August the 17th. And there is some built-in time there that in case things have to be shut down, you know, perhaps for a week, 2 weeks, or maybe even longer, that we could resume later. So you have to be prepared for almost anything. Right now the key word is flexibility, and we just have to you know, see how things go. We realize that there's some sports that are not very high risk and you can maintain social distancing, and then you have other sports, of course football is one of them, where there's going to be a lot of interaction among athletes, and those are the ones that we have the most concern with, but we're trying to do all we can to keep it safe.
What about the fans? I mean, football's outside, you've got volleyball and other sports that take place inside. Are there different rules for fans to attend those?
Well, we're certainly hoping that we're going to be able to have fans. The governor had a press conference earlier this week in which he said only 250 can attend. Now, we're still a ways away, almost 2 months away before we would have our first home football game here, so a lot can change at that time. And also, yeah, I think you have to look at different facilities and how big they are and how many they can accommodate, you know, but if we're not able to do that, then we'll look at some other options so that our fans can view the games, such as streaming them or something along those lines.
Do you think there are some athletes who have decided not to compete because they don't think it's safe, or do they just want to get out there and play?
I have not talked to anyone right now that does not want to play. I think they all want to play. You know, they love the game, but it also gives them opportunities. For some kids, it's a motivator to do well in school. For other kids, they're trying to get that college scholarship, and you know, or try to attain a championship season in their senior year. You know, there's a lot of different factors there, but our kids want to play.
This plan is going to change a lot, probably, depending on how the virus goes. How often are you reevaluating how seasons are going to look?
It'll be evaluated just constantly. And, you know, I do anticipate a very real possibility that some of the sports might be delayed a little bit. You know, August 17th is our target date right now as we speak, but that could change in the next week or so. It might get pushed back. Again, now there's other sports where, like a golf or a tennis, where you're not really in another person's face, and in that case, those might be able to start on time.
It's going to be an interesting year, Mr. Harrell. Thank you. And for much more on how high school sports are preparing to go forth during this pandemic, 7 Sports Director Pete Yannity will join us after the break. We've covered an awful lot of information tonight. If it feels a little overwhelming, we've got all of it for you and a lot more in one spot. Take a look.
Hi everybody, digital reporter Kristen Cheatham here, and I'm going to show you how quickly and easily you can find the latest information on back to school plans for your area. You can find all the latest information for each school district across the upstate, western North Carolina, and northeast Georgia on our website at WSPA.com. Just click on the back to school headquarters banner at the top of the home page. Then click on the top story to see what each district's back to school plans are. Additionally, you can find our back-to-school coverage and information on the WSPA 7 News app. Just download the app and scroll down to our back-to-school headquarters section. And you can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, so stay connected with us and we'll keep you updated on all things back to school.
Thank you, Kristen. And now here's a look at what we are working on for tonight at 11.
Tonight at 11, in-person or virtual learning. It's the tough decision parents have been struggling with all summer.
She wants to do well, even online, but she just wants to stay safe.
Before your child's first day, get the complete breakdown of online versus a hybrid school year.
And how much rain will we see over the weekend? We're tracking the impacts of Tropical Storm Isaias as it works its way towards the Carolinas. Get your forecast first tonight at 11.
And we want to thank all of our guests and, of course, you for joining us for this 7 News Back to School special.
If you've got more questions, keep them coming. No matter what option you choose for the fall, we all hope you have a safe and productive school year. Have a good night, everybody.